Hello and welcome to the Outcast. I'm your host HC, and with me is.
Wolf.
And today I think this is the first time we're talking about anything Tomb Raider, at least in full.
Ooh, yeah. I
Mm,
think it
Uh,
is.
yeah, we
Yeah, that's right.
didn't come.
We're going tomb raiding for spooky season. Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, I mean, to be honest, going into a tomb is kind of scary, I would assume, considering
Huh?
what Lara Croft has to deal with. But yeah, so I will foray into the Tomb Raider franchise with the a kind of recent Netflix show, Tomb Raider: The Legend of Lara Croft. So I guess before we go into this, Wolf, what is your experience with Tomb Raider?
I have played it's been a long time. I played some of the old original like series of Tomb Raider, right?
Yeah, like the PS1 games.
Yes. Yeah, like
Mm,
back PS1, PS2, like some of those games. And then I played all of the reboot trilogy as well.
yeah.
And I know a lot of people didn't like the reboot trilogy. I had fun with it personally.
Yeah, so I guess I kind of in the same boat. I would say that I I started getting into Tomb Raider with like the Legends trilogy, like the Tomb Raider Legend Anniversary, Underworld to some extent, and then I went back to the old ones. And I'm sorry to say, I'm actually not that big of a fan of the old ones. Like I get it, I get it that they were revolutionary for the time, and all the respect to them. But trying to play them today, it's just a troll for me.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
those older games haven't aged well, unfortunately.
Mhm. And I also think that the story behind the franchise is actually really interesting. Like the reason I was interested is because you remember that show Icons on the G4 channel or the gaming channel where
Oh wow, you're taking me back right now.
yeah, but I just remember seeing the episode on Tomb Raider, and I found the story really fascinating behind the creation of the franchise and what went on with it. I just found it really interesting, and a bit after that, the Legend suddenly came out, like at least here, and I'm like, huh, interesting, interesting. So, and then I kind of just kept around. I haven't played like the two Lara Croft end games that were out. I did play the reboot trilogy, like you. The first one I really liked. The
Hmm.
second one was okay. I remember liking it. The third one just kind of felt there, like it wasn't anything special. It was just like, okay, I
It
guess that was a game I played and beat.
it
Sure.
capped it off, but I mean, kind of all three of the games. It's been a while, so I don't remember everything from them. But
I will say I still think the first one is really good, but the second one is a decent enough continuation, but it doesn't reach the same heights. The third one is just there.
mm,
And then in terms of the movies, the first Angelina Jolie movie is something. The second one is absolute shit.
oh yeah, the movies. I wasn't even thinking about them.
Yeah, the first Angelina Jolie is like interesting to say the least. The second one is shit, and the and like the one based on the reboots was actually I've only seen it once, but I remember enjoying it.
I've not seen the new one, but the old Angelina Jolie ones, I didn't mind them. I had fun. They were fun. They were like, your early 2000s, like schlock kind of movie fun, is what they were.
Mhm. Yeah, but I will stand in defense of the new one, like the reboot one. I think that was actually pretty good.
I need to
So.
watch that one.
Yeah, ending aside, it was great. And now we have this show, and when I heard that it's coming, I'm like, interesting, interesting. An animated Tomb Raider show, and and again, considering we are now at the peak of video game adaptations in both TV and movies. Yeah, if we ignore like the Borderlands, I suppose, and and
Hmm.
like you, and like you have this really interesting rise in good video game adaptations in TV and movies, and I'm like, interesting, making a Tomb Raider show and animated too, like because I don't think this has ever been done. I know there were comics, but there was never an animated Tomb Raider thing
And this is set
before. So
after the new trilogy as well.
yeah. So and I'm like interesting, and then that's the thing. Going from the trailers, I figured that they were taking more notes from the reboot trilogy, and then a bit after I finished it, I read somewhere that. And also when you see it, you can very much tell that it's canonical to the reboot trilogy.
Oh yeah.
But then I went online and read that, oh, this is actually not only does is it a sequel to the reboot trilogy, but it's also bridging the reboot trilogy and the original games.
Hmm.
And now we are reaching the point where I say this show is kind of dead on arrival if that's the intention.
I'm I don't remember enough about the old games to be even able to say like how it's doing that, right?
Uh, uh, so you know what? Let's really quick, like a quick non-spoilery thoughts about the show. What was your thought process? What do you think about the show?
I think it's very average.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree, but I also think average isn't even cutting it because the show bored me.
That's fair. Like there are
Uh,
definitely
like
some parts where it did me as well.
like
And
like we are going to talk about this show, but I'm also warning you. There's a good chance that I'm going to talk about how the idea fails the show rather than the show itself because I binged the whole thing a few hours ago and I already forgot about it.
mm,
So, but and just for the record, people, I'm the one who suggested to do this, so I'm not blaming Wolf. This is on me. I'm taking the blame for this. This is my problem. But anyway, so this show, right? And at first when it starts, I'm like, okay, I guess I can see how this can carry on from the reboot games. I see it, and Lara is a bit more confident, to again help bridge the idea that she's going to become the Lara from the original games. But then the show delves into, we're going to get more into spoilers here, but if the point of this show is to bring her to where she is in the original games, then the show is kind of dead on arrival with
well,
the ideas and the things that they're trying to do with Lara's character.
I mean
Because
that's the thing. That's what the first three games were for, to get her to that point. And it's like
yeah,
the
not
problem
only
is
that
like we've
though.
already, if you're set after the first three games of the new Tomb Raider series, right? Like the new
Mhm.
trilogy. The
Yeah.
problem is like that was the point of like Shadow of the Tomb Raider, the final one in that trilogy, because like you kill all of, fucking what was it?
Trinity.
Trinity, yeah, like Laura has killed hundreds, if not thousands of, evil goons at this point. Like we shouldn't be seeing her get upset and like, oh god, I killed someone. It's like if this is the
At
lore from the
least,
game, I killed a lot of people already.
yeah, and that's the other thing that the reason that I'm saying that the whole idea is kind of dead on arrival because when you're looking at this, the original Lara Croft and the Lara Croft from the reboot trilogy are not the same character at all. And for the record, and there's nothing wrong with that. Because the reboot trilogy was going for something really different. It's called the reboot trilogy for a reason.
Mhm.
They were doing their own take. There's nothing wrong with trying to do a take on Lara Croft that's a bit more grounded because the original Lara, as much as we love her and everything, she's basically, like the Superman, or to compare it to something, maybe the Kim Possible. She's not really a flawed character. She's the one that just goes into the game because in her own words, she's just playing for sport. She's going on all of these adventures because she loves it. It scratches an itch for her. It gives her a kick of some kind. She's in it to win it, but she's also just playing for the hell of it.
Mm.
So, and you know what? There's nothing wrong with this type of character in a game, not at all. And And then if the reboot trilogy said, okay, you know what, we're going to modernize her and make her a bit more relatable and everything, that's perfectly fair, because I think that's the point where the first game shined the most, where you have to see this inexperienced adventurer going through all this stuff and legit suffering and having to emerge through it. And I think that's part of the things that made that game so cool for me to play as eventually back in the day. God, that game is like 11 years old. Where the fuck does the time go? But regardless. Eh, So, in a way, both of those could be Lara Croft, but they are different versions. You can't tell me that one is going to become the other. And it's kind of weird that this is the second Netflix adaptation of a video game that we're talking about. That my main problem with the show is basically the canonicity.
It, yeah, I kind of agree with you, right? Like that's kind of a lot of the problems I had. I do like this Laura. It,
Like,
it
she's
other
fine.
other than like she feels a little bit too much Nathan Drake like I think at times, right?
Which honestly, actually, you say Nathan Drake. I would say, in terms of character design, she doesn't even look like much like Lara Croft. She looks like Korra from The Legend of Korra in a Lara Croft
I
cosplay.
saw a lot of people like, "Hey, it's Korra. Hey, it's like
Really?
Katara." I'm like, "Yeah, I saw
I
a
don't know.
lot of people online because I started looking up stuff. A lot of
Oh,
people online, like you're
I
not alone in that thought. Apparently, a lot of people online feel like she's like
I
Korra
got
or
it.
Katara, or especially Korra though.
Yeah, I haven't seen those comparisons myself, but I just remember when she shows up like with that ponytail, and also the way that the blue shirt is designed. And also like the body structure and everything, that's like Korra.
A
That's
l-
literally Korra.
you're not
It's
alone. A lot of people apparently seem to think that.
so you know what? I'm glad that I don't just seem to have Avatar stuck in my head. That's a
It's
good
not
thing.
just you. And like I
Okay.
see it personally, I still see her as Laura. I still think she's like it's Laura enough for me personally. But I,
Mhm.
I, I do I get where you're coming from when you say, "Oh, it's Cora." I get it. I do get it.
It's like it is a bit distracting at some points, and especially because and this is also like not a spoiler thing, but did the animation seem choppy to you?
It had a few moments here or there, but nothing that really bothered me.
It felt like a lot of the frames are missing.
That might I'd have to look up. So just to be clear, this was done by Powerhouse Animation Studios. What else have they done? I forget.
I I'm
Yes.
I
So a lot of people said something similar. So one, Powerhouse did work on the first Castlevania show.
yeah, it has a similar style, not surprising.
They also did and they did Nocturne as well. So
Mm.
they did Blood of Zeus, and they did Masters of the Universe as well, like the He-Man
I
sequel we
think
watched.
I think they did a bunch of like sound the Sonic animations that you have in the games now. I think that's them. I'm not.
They yes, Sonic Frontiers and stuff like that. Yeah, they did a lot of that as well. So basically,
Mm-hmm.
they're one of Netflix's kind of like go-to animation studios. One of them. They also did Blood of Zeus, and a lot of people said like kind of, if I'm not mistaken, don't quote me, but if I'm not mistaken, a lot of people said some people said similar stuff about Blood of Zeus, where the animation in that show seemed choppy and like something was off about it. But again, I never noticed that issue. I don't know. Like you tell me, did you notice that issue with Castlevania Nocturne?
No.
I didn't either. So it's
Hmm.
very weird, right?
Yeah. And I'm not sure, maybe it was a budgetary reason or something, but it's
Could be.
just that I've seen it, and like and the action doesn't feel as smooth as I think it could have been or should have been.
Mm.
That probably means I'm right. And so there are a
It's
lot of things about
to
this
me it
show
wasn't
that
enough to stick out to me,
it,
but
it's
I kind of get where you're coming from with it, right?
it stuck out to me a bit, but at the same time, though, I think I only noticed it because, as I mentioned, the rest of the show wasn't grabbing me all that much. So,
Mm.
well, that. But I guess. is this the point where we just give the spoiler alert and we'll just start talking about this a bit more in depth?
I mean, sure.
Okay, so if you haven't seen the show and for some reason you're still interested, this is your chance to close the video, go watch it, and then come back. We are waiting technically for you guys. So spoilers in 3, 2, 1. Still here? Okay, so not a bad idea to have a Lara Croft that's like fighting with her inner demons, but I think it's too late in the game for what you're trying to do.
Well, again, like you tell us, you give the idea and very much are say that you were set after the games, and it's like it to me it felt like we've already kind of done all this with the games, right? It's
Yeah. You know what? Here's the
like
if the
Laura was
point of the
all we
show,
already had the second game, Rise of the Tomb Raider, where Laura was like still suffering from PTSD and everything about Roth,
yeah,
who by the way in this one is played by Nolan North, which I
which is kind of ironic.
I
I know.
I feel like they did that on purpose somewhat, so I give them a little nod, right?
It could have just been that he just happened to be in the studio, so it's like, hey,
I mean, it
can
could
you do a
be,
few
but I
lines?
feel like they kind of did that one a little bit on purpose because
Maybe.
Nolan
I'm
North.
not saying no, but
Oh, fair, fair.
I get what you mean.
For those who aren't
That
clear, Nolan North plays Nathan Drake, so
Yep. So like you said, yeah, exactly. If this was like a midquel between the first in the reboot trilogy and Rise of the Tomb Raider, I would have said, okay, this actually makes sense. It's
yeah.
not something that I necessarily need, but you know what? That's actually interesting.
And at first, that's what I
Now,
thought it was, but then they start mentioning like, oh, you destroyed all of Trinity and you did all this other stuff, and it's like, okay, you're set
yeah.
after Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and it's
hmm
like you aren't the show that should be doing this because it's like we've already been through all of this.
And it's
I felt
also
like,
kind of distracting that again it's setting the same continuity and it's supposed to set up it, but then also for all these characters, none of them are voiced by the original voice actors, which again probably has something to do with any sort of maybe union roles or something, or maybe Netflix wants more star power. But
I mean, I can accept
uh,
that personally. They did well enough at like imitating, right?
And that's the thing. I don't think they were even imitating. They were just doing their own thing. But
I
again,
mean,
and it's not a big,
Jonah
and it's not a
sounds
big
like
point.
Jonah sounds good enough, like close enough to what I originally remember Jonah sounding like, right? So it's like I
Yeah,
don't
and
mind all that much.
yeah, and again, and for the record, I can't remember. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing her name, but like Haley Atoll, is that her name? That like she's a great Lara. She did great.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Haley Atwell, yeah, yeah. She was great as
Yeah,
Laura. I liked her.
Yeah, she did a great Lara, and so for all intents and purposes, I would like to hear her more, like if they bring her into the games, I would. Kaylee Hawes though is still the best Lara. I
Hmm.
am not. I am dying on that hill. Now when it comes like to the other stuff that's in here, honestly, it just seems like there are no real risks in this show because it's like, and every time they're like, oh, this is so bad. Oh, Lara, you need to talk to someone. Oh, Lara, you need to stay away from this. And then they just kind of brush it aside, and Lara just goes ahead and does the badass thing anyway and wins. Like they treat everything as oh, this is like changes everything. This is the big thing. This is like the thing, this is dangerous. You shouldn't be doing this anymore. But then again, there are like no sacrifices, not there are no consequences to anything.
Fair, true.
And also, I'm not entirely sure about this, but whenever I play Tomb Raider, was there ever need to be a plot point where people actually ask if what Lara does is ethical? Or if there's anything ethical about her giving it to a museum, or that what she's doing is actually staying. Of course not, because that's not the point.
I mean, I think it's always been like a thing in the background of like you know, the community and the fandom like talking about that here or there, and I think other people have brought that outside of the community up, right? Have brought this
Mhm.
idea up, and I think it is like like there's a valid discussion you can have there, right? Because like she is British and taking all of these artifacts and then giving them to the British Museum of all
Yeah,
places.
but again, I think, but again, this is like to bring Sonic up in another argue, and I'm probably going to bring it up again because the show made me think about something as a point. But you know, I don't really stop and thinking to myself if he's getting speed tickets for running around in actual city streets and running faster than cars. I'm not thinking about
Now,
the law in this case. I'm just having fun.
true. But
So
I will say, right, the new games never really focused on the like collection of artifacts or anything like that, anyways, right? Like old Tomb
yeah,
Raider,
like
she was,
and
a
that's the other
sassy
thing.
femme fatale. She's a bad bitch. She don't give a shit, right? That's what old Tomb Raider
Yeah,
basically
and
was.
that's the other thing that I'm bringing with. You can't really confuse the two because Shadow of the Tomb Raider kind of implied that she's going to become a businesswoman after this.
Yeah,
That
like
she's probably going to be a bit more ethical about things or something, and like the old Lara, she would be like, I would give it to whoever the fuck wants it because I am Lara Croft.
old
I
Laura's
am
either keeping it for herself or she's selling that shit because that's who she
yeah.
is, right? New Laura,
Be,
like, all right, my goal was to kill all of Trinity. I did that. Job done. Moving on now. That's kind of old Laura. That was her focus. Really, was more so after like defeating Trinity. Like that was the main story of the three games, right?
mm-hmm.
And then this Laura's
Yeah,
kind of like, well, I'm kind of doing what old Laura's doing, but also not, right?
mhm. Yeah, and then again, I'm also bringing this up that that again, I know that I'm beating a dead horse by saying this, but this claim that it's bridging the two continuities just keeps fucking the show up more because on the one hand, I'm saying, okay, that's actually kind of interesting. Of what does follow the aftermath of the games after Lara beat Trinity? Obviously, there's not going to be the end of people that hearing about all these artifacts and are gonna try and play God. Hell, you can even claim that some of those things are happening in this current modern day and age.
Mm.
You could never know. But then this is supposed to lead into the original trilogy, into the original games, and Lara is using a smartphone, and there's a bunch of other technology that didn't exist back when the original Tomb Raider came out. And I know that the games aren't necessarily taking place in a specific timeline, but I'm pretty sure there's no point in any of the old games where Lara loses a smartphone. Why? Because at no point were there any smartphones when those games came out.
I mean, that's gonna be one of those things of like the
I
original
know,
series just made way too back in the day, right?
I
Like,
know, but that's exactly again the problem with all
but
of
yeah,
this.
you are right. Because I was gonna say something right when you got done. It's like, is it meant to be? And then I see like the premise right here on the wiki, right? It's meant to fill in the gap in the timeline, bridging the reboot trilogy to the original series of games. And it's like, okay, so we're saying the original series was set after the reboot, and it's like, yeah, don't do
No,
that. You can't do
no.
that.
Because a true story. When I first booted up the reboot game when it first came out, I'm booting it up, and my mother happened to be in the living room when I was playing it, and I just remember going, "Wow! I just saw Lara Croft using an iPhone. What the hell is this?" and if only I had known 11 years afterwards that this is going to be my main be a part of my criticism against an adaptation. And that where is that technology when the original trilogy is supposedly now taking place after?
Mm.
Uh,
Yeah, it doesn't work in that regard. And it's like, honestly, I barely even could tell you what the gap is and what and how they're bridging it, right? Other than like it has some references to old stuff that happened in the old series, like
Yeah, like at some point she drops the bow and arrow and goes for the pistols.
or
So
you
there
know,
was that.
or like again though, we had that moment in the games too, and it's like
Yeah, but like it was there in the end of the first game to like as a short callback. But
but it
other
was
than that,
also there in the third game when everything ended
in
as
the third game,
well.
that's you see how much of it was their kind of game. The third one is when I don't even remember.
It's like because that's kind of
So
like the point in the third game because we finished everything out. She's like old Laura now, and it's like,
yeah.
and and again, like that's my biggest problem with this show. It's like we're treading old ground with this show, right? Especially in season
Hmm.
one. It's like it's kind of disappointing because they couldn't come up with anything new. They just had to say like, okay, well, all of the development that Laura did have in the reboot trilogy, screw that. None of that happened. She didn't actually have any of that development.
Yep.
We're set after that development, but that didn't happen. She's still like suffering from
And like
PTSD from Roth. She still blames
to be
herself.
honest though, I will say just to be clear about this because this is actually and this was also a big contention point with another strong female character in the video game scene that had a PTSD, Samus Aran. If you know about Metroid Other M, it's not that she has PTSD, and it's not necessarily that that it happens at a point where after she quote unquote got over it. It's more that the sequel games don't never really implied that this was a part of her after the first game.
Well,
And I
after the
know
second
that
one, I would say.
when it comes to PTSD, it can literally come at you at any random point. I am
True.
aware.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not saying that, but it seems like that again they are playing it up as if it has just happened and she just refused to talk to anyone
yeah.
about it.
Especially
That's
again,
the issue.
and especially again after we had the second game where it did seem like she, you know, had moved past this to some degree or another, right? Like,
Hmm.
because that was kind of the point of the second game was moving past what happened in the first game with Roth and everything like that.
Yes.
And even the first game showed her like kind of like moving forward a little bit, right?
Hmm. And again, I'm not saying that there's no value or no need to really delve into it, but again, it feels like you they overplayed it for the placement in the time for what the show is trying to achieve.
Mm.
And and then like, there's also like the bad guy is just the most generic. You and I are not so different after all, kind of businessman, and it's like I am so sick of these assholes.
I can kind of overlook that, right? At
Yeah,
the very least, like they got a good voice actor to play him, so I'm like, yeah, I'm here for you. I kind of like
yeah.
you,
And
Richard
again,
Armitage.
yeah, and like again, the voice acting is good. Like it's just that the actors have nothing to work with.
Yeah, unfortunately, I I did personally, I kind of like Jonah a lot in this one.
Yeah, like Jonah was always like mm, not necessarily the heart, but he was like he's essentially kind of like the guy you're supposed to relate to. If Lara is the big action hero, then he's kind of providing the commentary for the players.
Mm, agreed.
So yeah, he was good. He was good. I enjoyed seeing Zip in here, but kind of like Lara, any connection between the Zip from the original games and the Zip in here is completely coincidental.
Mm. Yeah, just kind of like a new, kind of almost a new character, really.
Yeah, like this was the wake up call for me because I'm like, wait, Zip is not in the reboot trilogy. What the hell? I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, and I'm like, oh, they're probably just going to doing like the adaptation thing where you take a bit of that, you take a bit of that, and like Zip, what is the tech guy in the games for Lara? So it's like, okay, you know what? Let's bring him here. Why not? And then it's kind of like, oh wait, they are setting up that this is the same Zip. Okay, sure.
And they did
whatever.
introduce Camilla Roth, which I thought was an interesting little thing and a new thing to do, right? I
Hmm.
did like that a little bit, but
Camilla is the one that's implied to be a love interest, maybe,
well,
right?
they grew up together.
Yeah.
Like they see each other as sisters.
I,
I'm not
I
sure.
like I don't know. It seemed like again, and
It
for
definitely
the
seems like there's
record,
like that tension there, right?
mhm, yeah, like again, you know what to talk about? Another Netflix show with a female protagonist. Shira and Adora and Katra also technically grew up together.
True. They don't do anything with it at all, but I
But
fully get where
it,
you're coming from
it's
here.
it's
There's like that
implied.
tension there.
There's
I wouldn't say it's
tension.
implied. It's just there's that tension there.
I guess I'm saying that there's like implied tension there, like you can feel it. And to be honest, though, for the record, I don't care if they want to do them, make them lesbians. That's the
Eh,
show's part.
doesn't matter.
I don't care about that. It's just that I never saw Lara Croft as the relationship type,
Fair.
and
Because
I
she's a
get it. I get
psychopath.
well, besides that, of course, but like, and I get that this is again, if this is the reboot trilogy, then you know what? Okay, you know she's a bit more. I can see her opening up and lowering her defenses for someone she really likes. But again, this is supposed to lead us to the original Lara Croft, and the original Lara Croft doesn't give a shit because she only gives a shit about her thrills.
And she's a psychopath, original is. Let's be honest. Even
So
even reboot
so
Lara Croft is a little bit of a
unless
psychopath.
unless she goes, you have a tomb I would like to raid. There's no way that she would get off of this.
Uh-huh. Pick up lines with HC, everybody.
Don't, please, for the love of God.
Mm-hmm. Understood.
Uh, gamers all around there. Please never try that sentence on the cosplayer. You will be punched and kicked.
And a little bit deservedly so.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay. With all of that being said, where the hell were we
No,
even?
it's I agree with you. I definitely felt like you say you're sisters, right? But it definitely
Mhm.
feels like you were more, wanted to be more. I really don't know. I'm not entirely sure, but it to me as a viewer, it definitely feels like okay, there's definitely tension there. And you even have that scene earlier, right, of that girl in I think it was China, right, like early on, who's like, I'm gonna give
Yeah,
Laura
there's
this gift, and like, oh, and
yeah.
get really embarrassed when Laura looks at her and says thank you, and it's like, okay, so you're implying like,
And like again, there's nothing wrong with it, but I never saw Lara Croft as the relationship type.
but even there, right, like they
Either
have Laura
as
make a snide comment about it, right, like at that when that Chinese girl gives her that thing, right, like she makes like
mhm.
a kind of snide comment, like, yeah, not for me, like something like that. I forget exactly what she says. So it's like,
Yeah,
again,
there's even a point where even like Camilla, she asks her like, "Hey, are you seeing someone?" And Lana's like, "No," because yeah, I would.
again, like you said, right? I'm fine with it. I see nothing wrong with it. Go ahead and do it if that's what you want to do.
Hmm.
But it's definitely weird. It's like I don't know. It definitely kind of sits in this place of like it feels like they wanted to, but then also didn't, and so they kind of pulled back. And it's like, oh, they're sisters. They grew up together. There's no tension here. Look away. We're not doing that.
Yeah.
But we definitely thought about
Mm.
doing that. It's like
You know, how much do you wanna bet that they threw in the sister line like as like a very late ADR kind of thing, just to make sure that people are like, nope, 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 nope.
I feel like that's a definite maybe, right? Because it definitely like again like the tension of that scene does not feel does it just feels different. And then they say sisters, and it's like, hmm.
It's like, sure,
And
sure.
like to be clear, right? I get it. Roth had basically lied to Laura, saying like, Camilla wanted to leave and she actually didn't want to leave, right? And it's all this other nonsense, right? So it's like, fuck Roth a little bit right there because Roth was a bastard. And it's like, yeah, true, he
Mhm.
was. But I don't know, like the
But
scene
isn't it?
still
But then
has
again,
that tension
isn't
that
it like
just
kind
doesn't
of?
feel like
Isn't it
that.
like kind of like? But isn't it kind of like saying that Uncle Ben never wanted Peter Parker to date, and that's his excuse to being Spider-Man?
I mean, sure. Yeah, I get.
Like the questions that this show brings up, I'm surprised.
Mm,
Uh, so you know what? Just to really try to close the book on the whole like why setting it in the same continuity doesn't work for me. I just need to get something on because I made a point to say this because and I'm going to bring on this comparison because there's a good chance people might ask me.
hmm
Listen, listen. If they did the same shit with Sonic, as if suddenly after the third movie comes out, we're getting something that's supposed to imply, hey, Sonic the Hedgehog from the movies is going to grow up to be the exact same Sonic from the games, and it's all canon. No, no way in hell. I am not accepting that.
that would be bad.
It's huh?
That would be bad.
That would be bad. Exactly. You know why? Because one is an adaptation and the other one is the OG. And I'm bringing Sonic up not just because I'm a fanboy, but because, in a way, Sonic in the games and Lara Croft, the original Lara Croft, are kind of similar characters. They're both adventurers who are in it to win it, and they like excitement and they like being excited, and they like excitement and challenge. I'm not obviously there are differences in a lot of ways, but when you get down to it, it's kind of a similar characteristic.
Oh yeah, like
So,
old Laura's a
so
femme fatale, right? Like that's kind of her point back
yeah.
in the day.
Yeah, one is just a too cool for school kind of dude, and the other one is a more sophisticated femme fatale. Exactly, but
Mm.
there is that, there is this confidence. I don't give a shit. I am in it to win it, and I'm in it to win it, and I'm playing for the fun of it. So, so similar characters, and both of them they try to to humanize, quote unquote, them a bit more in the movies and the reboot trilogies, respectively.
hmm
Now, with Sonic, it works because it's an adaptation. You need to change things, so yeah, obviously you're gonna make him a bit more. You're going to start him off a bit less confident and a bit less what he is
Make it
because
more
he
relatable.
needs to grow. Yeah, he needs to grow. He needs to learn. That's perfectly fine. And it's also fine to do the same for Lara, that she needs to go through this experience in order to become the tough warrior that she is. But now, if you're going to tell me that the original and the adaptation slash reboot versions are the exact same, fuck you. That's not how it works.
Yeah, and again, like the second you say, "Hey, we're setting it at this point in time, and we're bridging the gap," and you say all of these things, right? A certain view and idea is going to probably come into your head of what Laura should be at this point in time, and this Laura doesn't look like that. She doesn't feel like that, right? Not nowhere near, in my opinion, at least. And it creates a disconnect that you then have to sit there, kind of like trying to piece together yourself while watching the show, and it takes you out of it. I feel.
Hmm. Especially if you're a fan.
Mhm.
And let's be honest, there's a good chance that if you're interested in checking this out, you are a fan.
Mhm. And there's an entire discussion, right? You can have on the idea of like it was Laura better when she was a femme fatale like character from the old games, or is new Laura better, right, from the new games?
Hmm.
Like, there's an entire discussion you can have on that. I would
There's an
always,
entire discussion, yeah.
I would personally err on the side of like, I think these are just two different types of Laura, right?
Hmm.
And that's perfectly fine. You can have Laura, you
Yeah,
can change up Laura's character completely if you want. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, it's a franchise that can lend itself well to changing up Laura for however you want to
definitely.
change it
And
to tell a new
again,
story.
considering Tomb Raider as a franchise has been around for almost 30 years now, right? And
Mm.
And it's perfectly fine to have multiple versions of the same character. Like, how many versions of Spider-Man do you have out there? How many versions of any other superhero? Ninja Turtles.
Mhm.
Enter franchise here. It's okay to have a different Lara, you know?
Yeah.
You don't need to connect the two together.
And I think that's what they should have done here, right? Was just, hey, this Laura is different. Like, you can say she's pulled from at least one of the games, maybe like the first game, and then just run with that, right? You'd have so much of a better time. And like, you wouldn't have all this extra baggage that you're trying to carry
Oh,
around
better
either.
yet, you could say that this is an adaptation of the reboot trilogy, but incorporates some elements of the
That
of
too.
the later games. Like, you don't need to necessarily set it up in a canon. Again, why is it that with both Sonic Prime and this, my main problem with this freaking adaptation is that it tries to be canon? Don't
Like
do your own thing.
that's definitely the biggest problem. The second you say you're doing that, there's a lot of baggage you now have to carry around as well, right? And you're probably going to drop the bar at some point. Like, you're gonna like drop some of that baggage because you can't carry it all and do it well. Most people, most shows would fail at that. Like, that's not a like indictment of this show, to be honest. Most shows would fail at doing that, I feel, from
Yeah.
any
And
franchise.
again, like I said, Sonic Prime also really also kind of fumbled there. But I will say though that at least with Sonic Prime, you can kind of canon or not, it doesn't really matter because that franchise was never really big on canon until recently.
Mm.
Here, here it does matter because this is literally a bridging point. The premise of the show is that it's going to bridge that version of a character to another version of a character. So it's even like you have even bigger expectations now. You have less you have less room to play around in.
I have another question for you.
Yes.
A- and this may be a little bit hard for you to answer, but after episode 7, did you feel like episode 8 was kind of necessary? Did you watch episode 8 and kind of
No.
feel like this feels a little added on and it doesn't feel like I needed this?
To be honest, every episode did. Every episode has the same plot,
Well,
which then again kind of repeated. And but I get exactly what you mean because episode 8 does end on a cliffhanger.
well, not that.
So,
My issue was like episode 7, like we've defeated Charles Davro and everything, and it feels like, I
mhm.
don't know, to me 7 felt like, okay, well, everything's kind of done now. I guess we should just move into the epilogue during episode 7, and that's kind of it. But then we go into episode 8, and it's like, no, we're gonna do a whole puzzle sequence and everything, and there's gonna be Laura fighting a bear and Laura fighting a dinosaur to end everything off, and then we go into the epilogue, where we get to see everybody's happy and doing their things. Excuse me, and Laura's moving on, and then we find out, oh, Laura has to maybe go
Somewhat.
help Sam now because something bad has happened to Sam.
Yeah, remember Sam, the one that doesn't show up after the first game? Yep.
Yeah, she was like, there's that one moment where Laura and apparently Sam from the first game had some issues, and Sam blamed Laura for Roth's death, and it kind of seemed like they, cleared things up and were okay with one another after the first game. But she's back now, and actually they still have problems because Laura still blames herself for Roth's death. Just a whole, yeah. But yeah, like, I don't know. I'm to me, I liked the episode 8 felt like this is the reference episode because, like, the
Mhm.
dinosaur thing, right? Laura fighting dinosaurs
Yeah,
a lot in the
definitely.
past games. I
Mm.
do respect and love, right? I will give them credit for, like, they had basically an entire episode dedicated to Laura just solving puzzles. Like, I kind of like respect that they did that. I kind of like that they did that because that's a big thing for Laura Croft, right? And it's like, okay, you did
Mhm.
that in the show.
It's
Like,
like
kudos
it's
to you,
that
I
one
feel.
thing. Yeah.
Like, and they did it in a way that it didn't feel like boring to watch per se. But
Hmm.
the issue is, it just felt like this is one of those things of like, I didn't really need to see them going to put the artifacts back, right? Like, that didn't really matter to me because we kind of had
Yeah,
like
like
our
again,
big
it's
bad
like
was
like,
beaten.
and again, this is yeah, and this is the other thing that I keep asking. was there ever really was anyone besides like jokes after it's all said and done, and like maybe if you're overthinking it, but was it really that big of a deal of what Lara actually does with the artifacts after the adventure is done?
Well, it's also here, right? Like other than like, yeah, I know, I get it. The world needs to be safe, but like, what did this bring us as a viewer and as an audience, right? Like seeing her put the artifacts back. Other than just that reference and that reference, you're like, oh, there's that reference, and you're like, oh, what exactly did
Yeah, it's
this bring us?
again, it's kind of like an ooh, I know this, ooh, I know that, but there's nothing besides that.
I also I will give them credit. I felt like this was like a sly little nod slash joke. The like, Jonah tells like Laura, like, go on, I got this. And Laura's, because a door's closing and she needs to get in there fast. So it's like double backflip
Yeah,
into the door. It's like,
yeah.
I feel like that's
And
you
that
doing a little sly
mm,
reference.
yeah, to the fact that she's that when you wanted to go faster, you are just flipping all over the place. Yeah,
hmm
I get
I
that.
feel like that was a little reference. And again, I'll give them a little nod to that. It's like that's actually kind of clever, right? And I do
Hmm.
feel like, me personally, is I do feel like the people behind the show who are doing some of the like, creative stuff and everything, like I feel like they, at least a couple of them, like kind of understand Tomb Raider to some degree. Like they know it, they get it.
You can tell that there was at least there was a maybe not from the necessarily the showrunners themselves, but you can tell that there was someone in the production team, maybe as an animator or someone else, that really got that they're working on an important character and they really wanted to put that in there,
Mm.
and that's always appreciated with
Yeah,
me.
absolutely.
The problem is the story that ties it all together.
Yeah, like the writing, the character dialogue, a lot of that just feels at best flat, right? Like, and that's like at best. At worst, a lot of times I agree with you. It is very boring. It's kind of, man, it just, a lot of
And
it just
again, there's a
doesn't
good
go
chance.
much of
They
anywhere.
say apparently, on the one hand, I've heard that it's not doing well in terms of like ratings. It doesn't do well at all. But apparently, a second season is coming.
Yes, Netflix did pay for a second season, and they, I believe it was like October 25th, they said, yeah, we are going to stand by that. We want new season.
Well, I guess only time will tell because they also said they want more inside job, and we know where this is going. So I don't know. Like if there will be another one, talk to me when it's out. I honestly, I'll be like, all right, this is a thing. I forgot we even talked about this.
Okay, I do think there's something they could do here, and maybe a second season gives them a chance, like, to, okay, we can get away from, like, the baggage maybe, and we can actually do
Mm,
something different and unique to us
yeah.
now and tell actually a good story. That's my hope. But again, the problem is like, as of now, they still have all that baggage that they're carrying around from old Tomb Raider, and it's like, just
Hmm.
get rid of that. Like, you don't need that. Just tell a Tomb Raider story.
You just tell a good Lara story. That's all
Yes,
that people would want. You don't need to set us up in a continuity.
it's kind of sad, I guess, in a way. You know, like
Yeah.
Tomb Raider. Lara Croft inspired inspired Nathan Drake to a degree, right?
Hmm.
And Nathan Drake goes on to make some great games and some really enjoyable story and everything. Even
And
though,
the movie was kind of,
and then the
but I
movie was
get
kind of
you.
meh, and then we was like, all right, it's Tomb Raider's chance to try now. Maybe it can succeed where nope, it can't succeed where Nathan Drake failed.
Well, to be honest, I I would say that out of three movies against one movie, Nathan Drake has one movie that I'm kind of it wasn't the worst thing in the world, but it was also nothing amazing. Against one movie that I think it was actually all right. So there's that. But I think like as a franchise on its own, it's kind of weird because Uncharted knew when to end it
Mm.
because I don't know, maybe they'll announce something at the time of the recording. Uncharted 4 is the last game with Nathan Drake, and The Last Legacy is the last Uncharted game in general,
Yeah.
right? So maybe they have something in the works. I don't know. But but at this point, Uncharted knew when to end, and Tomb Raider just seems like it will just keep going because Lara Croft is such a big name at this point.
Well, it's also like Laura Croft. You again, I do think it's a character that you can more easily just, unlike Nathan Drake, who feels like he has a beginning and an end to his story, right?
Hmm.
Regardless of how you feel about him being like, which I do love the juxtaposition of like, hey, we're gonna make you feel about Nathan Drake, but he's still kind of a psychopath.
And no, listen. Nathan Drake does things that even the characters in the game call him out for it, and even he himself knows that he's fucking insane.
Oh yeah,
But but it feels more real. Like you feel like this is a guy that you can run into on the street.
a little bit, still a bit of a psychopath, but I get you, right? Like,
Well, you're telling me that you're not meeting up with psychopaths in you're doing a podcast with me, dude.
I mean, I feel like you're better than Nathan Drake in a lot of ways.
Well,
Let's be honest.
obviously, I won't try to find the coffin of Marco Polo for one. That's very true.
I mean, we can go treasure hunting. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's go to the Amazon, fight terrorists. Yeah,
We'll manage. We can do it.
yeah, we can totally do it. We have main character immunity by our side.
It's true. At least I do.
Yeah. Hmm.
No, but
Well,
like, it's definitely one of those things, right? Of like, mm, it's. I would love to, see one of them make it right, and one of these characters
mm,
be able to like make the transition well. And yes, I know people over there like Indiana Jones. It's like I get it. He's there. I'm perfectly. I love Indiana Jones.
he-
He's
he's
great.
there. He's there, but he's also like he started off as a movie.
Yeah,
If anything, there's the new Indiana Jones game that's coming out.
yeah, and that actually also looks pretty good.
Mhm.
It's like we already know Indy can make good games. I would like to see one
Yeah,
of
good
these two
movie.
make a good movie or a good show.
Mhm.
It's like they're so close. I feel like they can do it with these characters, just, or at least Laura, anyways.
Well,
I don't think we'll get anything from Nathan Drake because I agree.
mm,
I think his story's completely done. But
again, we'll see if Naughty Dog even has any plans for this franchise because right now they're kind. I don't think they even have plans for The Last of Us anymore, but that's a whole other topic.
we'll see. I mean, we're getting the season 2 of that show, so
Yeah,
maybe.
but that's not really Naughty Dog making a game. That's
True. We will see. Maybe they, have something cooking and we'll all be like, whoa. Or maybe they
let's
don't.
hope. We shall see about that. But anyway, anything else to say about Tomb Raider: The Legend of Lara Croft?
I didn't hate it. Like I would still say like if you're even like, if you're interested in Lara Croft, I think this is like there are worse things you could experience with Lara Croft, but I don't know, like eh, there are better things you could spend your time on too, right?
Yep.
And it's sad to say, because
Hmm.
I wanted to like this more than what I did. And I do think there's something there, but it just fails to live up to that. And I think a lot of the reason is because it's trying to carry on so much of that old baggage and do this idea of connecting everything. And it's like, no, just stop. Don't do that. You're hurting yourself way too much.
Yep. Well, I guess with that said, that's all for this episode of The Outcast. We hope you enjoyed it. What are your thoughts about Tomb Raider: The Legend of Lara Croft? You can tell us all about it in the comment section below, on our Tumblr, which is Berkcast Team, and on our Twitter, which is Berkcast with a capital B, capital C. So until next time, I was HC.
I was Wolf.
And we will see you all in the next episode. Take care.
Bye bye.